keep it interactive. Probably easy if everyone's muted, unless you have any questions you want to ask, but please feel free to jump in at any point in time. Just before I start, I just want to say a big thank you to Shmuley and to Judith for inviting me to address the Kehillah Kadosha of Amsterdam. I once spent the honor of spending Shabbos there, and we had a great time, and I hope to spend more time in the future with a special congregation. So what I thought we'd discuss now, as we just started, is the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer, and try and touch on a few different topics, both from a halachic perspective, from a philosophical perspective, hashkafic perspective, and try and take some messages that we can keep with us, and try and make that be relevant to the time period that we find ourselves in now, both in the sense that we're going through Sefirat HaOmer, but also particularly in terms of the time period that we find ourselves in with regards to the unfortunate coronavirus. And this shiur should be a source of help, please God, for all those who are ill, who aren't feeling well, that they should have a refuah shlema and protection for those who, thank God, are doing well, and it shall come to an end very, very quickly, mitzvah Hashem. Parshat Emor discusses the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer. It actually comes up twice, once in Parshat Emor and the other time in Parshat Reis. But in Parshat Emor, which we're going to read in a few weeks' time, please God, with the minyan, the Torah says, "Usfartim lachem mimocharat Shabbat." You should count for yourselves the day after Shabbat. And we know that even though it says the day after Shabbat, it's really referring to Pesach, which we'll touch on shortly. And it says from the day that you bring the Korban Omer, you should count for 7 weeks. So the Gemara in Menachot, Daf Samech Hey, says, it picks up on the fact that the Torah uses the word lachem. It says, Usfartim lachem, which lachem is you in plural. So the Gemara learns out from this and says that the sefira has to be a sefira lekol echad ve'echad, that every single person has to count the Sefirat HaOmer. It says lachem in the plural. It's meaning for you and you and you. Whereas the other parsha that discusses it says Shiva Shavuot tispor lach, that you in the singular should count, and Chazal understand that's referring to the Beit Din, to the community. So there's an interesting discussion that Mishnah Berurah has, where he quotes a debate about whether a person can fulfill his obligation of Sefirat HaOmer through the mechanism that we know as Shomei Ka'oner. Shomei Ka'oner means that if you hear something, so then you can fulfill the obligation through actively listening to the person that says that. For example, we know that on Friday night for Kiddush, so normally the Balabai comes back from shul, or if he hasn't gone to shul, he stands up and he says Kiddush for the household. So the mitzvah of Kiddush applies to everyone in the family, both men and women. So why doesn't everyone say Kiddush? The truth is that there are some minhagim that one person from every family does that, and that married people do it as well. But the prevalent custom, the main custom is that one person says Kiddush on behalf of everyone else. So the question is, how does that work? What's a halachic mechanism that allows that to take place? So there's a notion of Shomea, the one who listens, Ka'oneh, is as if he said it himself. So if you actively want to fulfill your obligation through the person that is speaking, so you can fulfill your obligation through Shomea Ka'oneh. So it says in Mishnah Berurah that there's a debate about whether this mechanism, this principle of Shomea Ka'oneh, whether that applies to Sefirat HaOmer or not. So on the one hand, you might think that no, it doesn't apply, because as we said before, that the Gemara says that the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer is a mitzvah of Sefira lekol echad ve'echad. It's an individual mitzvah that applies upon everyone, right? Even the Kiddush also applies upon everyone. But nevertheless, the Gemara learns that the Sefira has to be done personally. Every individual has to count. And therefore, I can't count for you and you can't count for me. So that's the one side. That's the one side of the argument. The other side of the argument says that no, it doesn't mean, when the Gemara says Sefira lekol echad ve'echad, that it has to be accounting for everyone, it doesn't mean that it can only be done by yourself. Rather, what it's trying to do is to distinguish the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer from other mitzvah which are to do with the community. In other words, we know that there's a mitzvah of counting Shemitah or counting the Yovel years, and those mitzvot are mitzvot that apply on the Beit Din, right, on the rabbinical court. And then the Beit Din have to count the years up to the Yovel year. So in order to not think that, or to counteract the potential thought that the mitzvah only applies to the Beit Din, so therefore the Gemara says that everyone has to count. It doesn't mean that no one can do it for you. It just means that's an individual mitzvah, just like Kiddush is an is an individual mitzvah. Okay, so that's a discussion in the Mishnah Berurah. The question is, we have to understand why, according to the view that says that you can't do it for someone else, we have to understand why. Why should that not count? Well, why is that different to any other mitzvah? Any other mitzvah of speech that you can do through other people? So why should it be different to a mitzvah of kiddush or any other mitzvah of speaking? That's the first question. Second question I want to discuss, or ask rather, is that we know that ordinarily when we're davening with a minyan, so when it comes to Ma'ariv, especially in the southern hemisphere where it's not too late, so most shuls you do Ma'ariv after it's already dark. So in the northern hemisphere it's already getting close to the summer and it gets dark very late. So a lot of minyanim have a mincha Ma'ariv back to back where it's still quite daylight outside. Yeah, some minyanim still have enough after Nacht. But if you're davening in a minyan that davens Ma'ariv when it's already night outside, so the custom is that the chazan or the rabbi or someone from the community will stand up and will count Sefirat Omer out loud. And then afterwards, everyone will go and do it themselves. So the question is, why do we have this notion, why do we have this minhag that the rabbi or the chazan or someone stands up and counts it and then everyone does it afterwards? We don't find, for example, on Sukkot, we don't find that the rabbi stands up, shakes a lulav and esrog, and then everyone does it after him. No, it's an individual mitzvah. Everyone shakes a lulav and esrog, the rabbi included, the chazan included, and they will do it. There's no communal involvement. There's no communal aspect of shaking the lulav and esrog. So the question is, why do we have it that the rabbi comes along and does it first? And if you want to come along, if you want to answer and say, no, the reason is because some people may have already missed out, they missed the day, and therefore you want to do it on their behalf. So that still might be a good answer sometimes, but you have minyanim where everyone is still in the counts. Or, for example, what about on the first night doing it, especially in Eretz Yisrael, where there's no second night of Seder, no second night Yom Tov. So you have a regular Ma'ariv minyan, Motzei Yom Tov. So then no one's missed it yet because the Sefirat hasn't started yet. So in those instances, when it's the first night, if you're with a minyan where everyone's done it, what doesn't make sense, doesn't seem to make sense halachically, why there should be a reason for someone to make the count or do the Sefirat on behalf of everyone else. That's question number 2. Question number 3, stay with me, we'll get through all the answers, please go. Question number 3 is that there's a famous question as to why we don't have the bracha of Shehechianu over Sefirat Omer. You know, normally when you have a mitzvah that you haven't done for a while, you haven't done for a particular time period, so we always say Shehechianu. First time you shake the lulav, you say Shehechianu. First time sitting in the sukkah, blowing shofar, reading Megillah, you always say Shehechianu. So why is it that for Sefirat Omer, which is a mitzvah that only comes around every so often, so why is it that we don't say Shehechianu? And it's not because it's a rabbinic mitzvah, according to most views, because Megillah also is a rabbinic mitzvah, and yet we say Shehechianu the first time, Sephardim, first time they read the Megillah, Ashkenazim, both times they read the Megillah. So why don't we say Shehechianu? So the Shibolei HaLeket and the Meiri, they say that, yeah, good question. The truth is that we do say Shehechianu, it's just that it's incorporated in the Shehechianu that we say on Pesach night, on the first night Seder, or on the Sedarim. Right? We say the Shehechianu on Pesach, and says the Shibolei HaLeket and the Meiri, that Shehechianu we say on the Seder night, that counts for Sefirat Omer. So again, this is very strange because there seem to be two totally independent things. Seder night, you say Shehechianu over the Yom Tov or Pesach, over the mitzvah we're going to do on the Seder. And Sefirat Omer seems to be something totally disconnected, no connection, no direct connection. On the contrary, that the Torah says that when do we start saying, counting Sefirat Omer? We do Mimocharat Shabbat, the day after Shabbat. And Chazal, we'll touch on it in a moment, Chazal say that when it says Mimocharat Shabbat, the day after Shabbat, it's really referring to Pesach. So the Torah is saying that you do it the day after Pesach. You start counting the day after Pesach. In other words, it's disconnected from Pesach. You have Pesach, and then after Pesach, you start counting. So how do we understand the view that Shehechianu is said? It's just it's on Seder night, said on Pesach, and that counts for Sefirat Omer. And just to drive home the concept how Sefirat Omer, is removed from Pesach, is that there's an opinion of the Ramban that says that Sefirat Omer is not a mitzvah aseh shehazman grama. What does that mean? We know that normally women are exempt from positive time-bound mitzvot. They can still do it if they want to, generally, but they're exempt from positive time-bound mitzvot. So for example, shaking a lulav is a positive time-bound mitzvah, and women are therefore exempt from it. Ashkenazi women have the custom of doing it and making a bracha nonetheless. Sephardim don't. It's the debate between the Rambam and Rabbeinu Tam, which follows through to the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. But a positive mitzvah that is time-bound, a mitzvah aseh shehazman grama, women are exempt from. So you would think that Sefirat Omer should be a quintessential example of a mitzvah aseh shazman gram, of a positive time-bound mitzvah. Why? Because it starts on the day after Pesach and goes through for 7 weeks. You can't afford it. So it seems to be a perfect example of a mitzvah aseh shazman gram, a positive mitzvah that's time-bound. Yet, and therefore, by extension, women should be exempt from it. But says the Ramban, says that women are obligated in the mitzvah of Sefirat Omer. Why is that the case? What about the fact that it's a positive mitzvah that's time-bound? So he says that no, it's not really time-bound. True, we only do it this time of the year, but it's not bound to any particular date. It's just the day after we bring the Korban HaOmer, then we start to count. In other words, it's not connected to Pesach at all. It's after Pesach. It just happens to be during the time period that a particular Korban is brought, then the count starts. There's no direct connection. They explain the name of the Ramban between Sefirat Omer and Pesach. So that being the case, how do we understand the view that says that Shechianu on Pesach counts for Sefirat Omer? Again, 3 questions. Just to summarize for anyone that's come in late, is that the Gemara says that Sefirat Omer, based on the pasuk that says Usfartem lachem, should be a count for each and every person. There's a debate that the Mishnah Berurah brings about whether you can fulfill your obligation through someone else. In other words, you hear someone count, and therefore you be yotzei through them, you fulfill through them. So some say yes, you can. Some say no, you can't. So first question is, how do we understand the view that says you can't? Why is it different to any other mitzvah of speech? Second question is, why ordinarily when we daven with minyanim is a custom that the rabbi or the chazan counts out loud first, and then everyone does it afterwards? And if you want to say it's because some people have already missed out, they've missed a day, so what about on the first day, or what about if you're on a minyan that everyone's done it? Everyone's doing their count. And third question is, how do we understand the view that says that the Shechianu would say on Seder night counts for the mitzvah of Sefirat Omer? So you have 3 questions. I'd like to share with you a chiddush from Rav Kook and try to tie this in to help answer our questions. And start of Rav Kook, it's actually it really starts from a sefer called Kli Chemda. From his name was Rav Meir Dan Plotsky. I don't recall too much biographical information about him, but it was a big Talmid Chacham, and he put together a sefer called Kli Chemda, and he sent it to Rav Kook for an approbation. And Rav Kook is a very well known for his being a Chavei Tzion, a lover of the land of Israel and the Jewish people. But what most people don't know is that he also had some phenomenal halachic sfarim to do on that discuss all matters across the board, including matters pertaining to Eretz Yisrael, but all kinds of halachic matters, just like any other shalas and shuvas. In one of his shuvas in the sefer called Mishpatei Kohen, he addresses the following topic. So the Gemara says, I'll take one step back. So when it comes to Sefirat Omer, so there's actually only very few words and reference even in the Gemara. I actually counted it today that the Gemara that almost everything to do with Sefirat Omer is learned from is a Gemara Menachal, the daf mentioned before, daf Samachei, Aleph Amud Bet. And there's actually only 26 words that discuss the whole mitzvah of Sefirat Omer. Whether it's a mitzvah to count the days, count the weeks, is it a rabbinic mitzvah, is it a Zeichel Mikdash? Very little was written on it. But there's books and books, Sfarim that are written on all the halachic topics to do with Sefirat Omer, which is really interesting that there's so little in the initial source and only very few psukim in the Torah, but the literature on it is very big and very vast. So but before the Gemara talks about the mitzvah of Sefirat Omer, so it first discusses between the Sadducees or the Baitusim, those who didn't believe in the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and the main community of Am Yisrael. And the Gemara says that there were certain enactments that were to counteract those who didn't believe in a Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's various different groups which have slight differences. To be honest, I don't really, I'm not such a bucky in the differences between them, between the Karaites and the Sadducees and the Baitusim. So just for the purposes of simplicity, we'll group them as one for now. But all you need to know really is that they do not believe in the notion of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So for example, it says in the Torah that about a mitzvah of tefillin, you should put tefillin on your arm, it says on your hand, and between your eyes. So and the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Chachamim, they come along and say that when it says put on your hand, it really means on your arm, on your bicep. When it says between your eyes, it doesn't mean here, it means on top of your head. But those Karaites and the Sadducees that didn't believe in the Torah Sheba'al Peh, so they literally put it on their hands and they put it between their eyes rather than on their bicep and on the top of their head. Anyway, So the Gemara says that there were certain enactments that were brought in to counteract the Sadducees, to show that no, we really believe in the power of and the authenticity of Torah Shebaal Peh. And the first thing the Gemara says was that there was a debate about the Korban Tamid. Now the Korban Tamid was the daily sacrifice that had to be brought every single morning and every single afternoon. And we know that paralleling that, we daven Shachar in the morning and we daven Mincha in the afternoon. So there's a debate between the Sadducees and the regular group of the Jewish people. The Sadducees said that, the believers in Torah Shebaal Peh, they said that the money that was used to purchase the Korban Tamid, the daily sacrifice, had to be purchased with public funds. Had to be the money from the Tzibur. So therefore, they had a collection once a year. They announced it at the beginning of Adar, Rosh Chodesh Adar. That's the Shkalim. They read about not too long ago. And they would raise all the money. Everyone would give half a shekel, and that would come into the public pot of money, and those public funds were used to fund the Korban Tzibur. The Sadducees, however, felt that any individual could come along, and if they wanted to, they could donate the daily offering. So if it was your birthday, it was a yortzeit in the family, it was a special occasion, anniversary. So if you wanted to, according to the Sadducees, you could say, you're a wealthy person, say, you know what, guys, it's on me. I'll take it. Today's my birthday. I'm going to pay for the Korban Tamid for today. But the Chachamim held that they said, no, it doesn't count. It has to come from public money. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter how many people get together. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It's not good enough. It has to come from public money. It can't come from any individual. So that was the first argument according to the Gemara. The second argument according to the Gemara was about our topic being that of Sefirat Omer. As we said before, the Torah says that you have to start counting Sefirat Omer mimocharat haShabbat, from the day after Shabbat. And the Chachamim said, even though it says Shabbat, really it means Pesach. Really means Pesach. And the Sadducees said, no, it says Shabbat. We take everything literally. Shabbat means Shabbat, i.e. Saturday. They have to start counting the day after Saturday, mimocharat haShabbat, and therefore you always start counting on a Sunday. And the truth is that they have a very good claim. If the Torah really meant that you should start counting after Pesach, so you should say, the Torah should have said, Sfatim lachem mimocharat Pesach. That's a good question. Why does the Torah, in fact, not say mimocharat Pesach? Why does the Torah say that you should count mimocharat Shabbat? So they had a very, very big debate. It goes on for a little while. And the Gemara says that the Sadducees came along with the following claim. They said that Moshe Rabbeinu was an Ohev Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu loved Am Yisrael. And therefore, he wanted to make sure that Shavuot was given as a long weekend. Because we know that Pesach goes on for a week, and 8 days in Chutz La'aretz, and Sukkot goes on for an extra day, 8 days or 9 days, and Shavuot in Israel is only 1 day. So say you miss out. There's no Chol Hamoed period. There's no family trips to the amusement parks. There's no bowling trips. There's no Pesach programs. There's no getaways. So it says the Sadducees said Moshe Rabbeinu as an Ohev Yisrael, he's a lover of the Jewish people. So he wanted to give the Jews a day off, an extra day off, give them a long weekend. So therefore, he established it that it should be the day after Shabbat. You start counting on the Sunday. And therefore, the 50th day will always be on a Sunday. And then you're going to have 2 days off. You have Shabbat and you have a day after. You have Sunday would always be Shavuot. So he's giving us a long weekend, giving us 2 days off. The Chachamim said, no, that's not the case. Really, Mimocharat Shabbat means Mimocharat HaPesach. And the interesting thing, according to the Gemara, is that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stood up when he heard this claim about Moshe Rabbeinu being an Ohev Yisrael, a lover of the Jewish people, and therefore giving us 2 days in a row. So it says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, no, you got it wrong. Moshe wasn't an Ohev Yisrael. He said, if Moshe really loved us, so why did he take us through the desert for 40 years? The Torah says that it really should have been an 11-day journey from Har Sinai, from Mount Sinai to the land of Israel. So it should have taken 11 days. So why did it really take 40 years? Why did Moshe take us through the desert for 40 years? If you really think he loved Am Yisrael to the extent that he organized that we should have 2 days in a row for Shabbat followed straight into Shavuot, so it can't be that he was really a lover of the Jewish people because he took us through the desert for 40 years. It's very strange dialogue here. On the one hand, you're having the Sadducees making quite a logical claim based on the Psukim. You have Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai saying that no, Moshe wasn't really an Ohev Yisrael, but it can't really be. Can't really be that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is saying that Moshe wasn't a lover of the Jewish people. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the greatest of the great. He's the one that saved Am Yisrael after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one that saved the Jewish people. He salvaged everything for us, and he set up camp again in Yavne. And he's known that there's lots of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes up all the time in the Gemara, and he's one of the greatest of the greats, the God of Hador par excellence. So how do we understand this exchange where the Karats were saying, the Sadducees were saying that Moshe was a lover of the Jewish people, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is saying he wasn't a lover of the Jewish people? It seems to be counterintuitive, and seems to be the opposite of how we would normally understand this. And furthermore, what's the connection between this debate about the Korban Tamid, about the daily offering, whether it can come from private money or has to come from communal money? Is there any connection between that and the general approach of disagreeing or not believing rather in the Torah Shabbat Peh, and they're not believing in the argument over Mimocharat Shabbat, referring to Pesach? Is there any common thread between these? So Rav Kook says the following. Rav Kook says that these three disagreements about the oral Torah in general, about the Korban Tamid, and about when to start counting the Omer, was really a machloket, a debate about the nature of the Jewish people. And he said the debate was whether the nation of Am Yisrael was just a combination of many, many individual Jews, or whether Am Yisrael takes on the status of its own special entity. In other words, are we just a conglomerate, a big group of lots of people, lots of pratim, lots of individuals? Or no, is it Am Yisrael takes on a new entity altogether, and it's a new tzura, a new klal, where something qualitatively different than just a group? In other words, we find that in every country, so you're a citizen of a country. You're born in a country, or in a particular country, you marry someone born there, or you live there for long enough, you become a citizen. And it becomes a very, very pragmatic thing. You can vote there, and you pay taxes there, etc., etc. So according to the Sadducees, according to the Karats, the Patzusim, they said the same with Am Yisrael. Same way you're born in Holland, you're born in, it should be Netherlands, from what I understand. You're born there, you're born in Australia, you're born in England, you're born in Israel, so you become a citizen of that place. So too, you're born a Jew and you're a citizen of the Jewish people. That's how they understood it. But the Chachamim, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, were saying that no, it's not just that we're a group that's made up of lots of individuals, that no, we have our own unique identity. That is the identity of Knesset Yisrael, of Am Yisrael, of Bnei Yisrael. And he says that the fact that this notion of the Torah distinguishing between two different concepts, one of the tzibur or one of individuals, he brings a proof for this. That when it comes to bringing korbanot in general, so once you've set aside a korban, so you're not allowed to change that for another korban. So if I take upon myself, I say, you know what, this particular sheep I want to bring, I'm feeling generous, I want to give thanks to Hashem. So I come and say, this sheep is now a korban. I can't come along afterwards, once I've dedicated that korban, that sheep, I can't come along and say, you know what, I've fallen in love with that sheep, I'm going to bring a different sheep from my farm. You can't do that. It's called tamura. If you try and switch one that you've already put holiness onto, you can't switch that around. However, the halacha is that if you do it, so then it's wrong, but it counts. To the extent that both sheep are now considered holy, and you have to bring both of them. So it's wrong to do, but you can fix it up. You have to bring both sheep as a korban. However, if it's a korban sibul, if it's a communal obligation, so then no one can come along and say, you know what, we don't want to bring this sheep now, this sheep for the korban sibul, we're going to bring a different sheep. Even if you do that, it doesn't work. Again, on an individual level, it's wrong, but it counts. But on a sibul level, on a communal level, it doesn't even count. Why? Because a sibul is different to shutafut. That a tzibur, the community, is different to just a partnership of many individuals. That a regular partnership is made up of 5 people going to business together. So they're 5 people that happen to have something in common. That is that they have financial dealings together. When it comes to Am Yisrael, it's not a shutafut, it's not a partnership to the extent that anyone can do what they want for the other person. It's that no, it's a tzibur, we're taking a whole new entity. And this is what the Sadducees rejected. They rejected the idea of a national sanctity. And therefore they held that any individual can bring the korban tamid. Why? Because there's no notion in their mind of a tzibur. So if I'm feeling generous, I'll sponsor the korban tzibur for the day. If you have a yortzah in your family, you can sponsor the korban tzibur for the day. But Chachamim, the believers in the Torah Shabbat Peh, they say no, it doesn't count because the tzibur has its own status, has its own entity. And I'll show you where this has ramifications. It's an interesting question that was asked to Rav Moshe Feinstein about whether you can count someone in a minyan who is not frum. Can you count someone not frum in a minyan? Rav Moshe Feinstein says yes, you can, and his proof was the fact that the concept of having 10 people for a minyan is learnt out from the Meraglim, from the spies. And we know that of the 12 spies, so 2 of them came back with a good report, Yeshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuneh, and 10 came back with a negative report. And the Torah refers to them as an Eidah, as a community, and therefore since the source of a community being 10, because you have 10 bad spies, were from 10 people that did something wrong. So therefore, it says Rav Moshe Feinstein, we see that you can count Mechalelei Shabbat, you can count people that aren't frum, you can count them in a minyan. So then the person that asked the question to him responded with another question. And he said, but one second, we have an opinion of the Rogatchover Gaon. He says that you can't count for Musaf. Why? Because Musaf, we know, is different to all the other tefillot that we daven. The other tefillah we daven, so it's at the same time that the korban was brought, but really the major aspect of the regular tefillah is that you're davening to Hashem, you're having a connection with Hashem. When it comes to Musaf is totally a parallel of the korban Musaf that was brought. And you see that in the text. I won't go through it now, but if you look at the text next time you daven Musaf, it's all about the korbanot that were brought. So therefore, says a Rogat Shava, he says that Musaf, you can't count someone that's Mechal Shabbat, someone that's not Frum, because you're not meant to accept a korban from someone that's not from. The pasuk says Zevach Reshaim Ta'eva, that the offering of a wicked person is a Ta'eva, it's an abomination. So therefore, says the Rogat Shava, Rav Moshe Feinstein explains, the Rogat Shava holds that for Musaf you wouldn't be able to count non-from people with you, but for the other tefillah you would be able to. However, Rav Itzla Ponovich, he disagreed. He said no, even for Musaf you'd be allowed to. Why? Because this notion of not counting, not accepting a korban of someone that's a rasha, someone that's wicked, that's only a personal korban, a personal sacrifice. When it comes to a communal sacrifice, there's no idea of a tzibur being wicked. You can't have that. It doesn't exist. And since Musaf is brought, the korban Musaf was brought from the tzibur, so therefore it doesn't matter who's involved with that. But you can have a full community of Rashayim, a full community of people that are wicked or aren't frum or not good people. It doesn't matter. They can still count for Musaf, because the tzibur is not just a conglomerate of individuals, but tzibur takes on its own entity. Bringing another proof to this. That is to do with Lag BaOmer. So we know the Gemara says that Lag BaOmer, or during the period of the Omer, that 24,000 of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva passed away. The Gemara says because Lo Nahagu kavod ze bazeh, they didn't show kavod to each other. But the question is that we know that Rabbi Akiva was a paradigm of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. The Gemara says that when the pasuk in Pasha the Kedoshim says V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, the Rashi in the Torah quotes that Amar Rabbi Akiva ze klal gadol b'Torah. This is an important principle of the Torah. So how could it be that Rabbi Akiva, who was this paradigm of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, how could it be that Dafke, his Talmidim, died because Lo Nagu kavod ze bazeh? They didn't show kavod to one another. So again, we have this chakira, we have this notion about whether a minyan is just a group of 10 units or does it take on a new entity. And says the Rogat Shava, when it comes to a tzibur, it's a new entity altogether, as Rav Kook said as well. And I'd like to bring a proof to this. There's a Mishnah in Brachot, in the 7th parak, where there's a debate about the text of Zimun. So we know that if you have 3 or more men that eat bread together, so they have to, before they bench, you have to make a zimun, to be mezamen. And the Gemara says that, and we know the minhag is, if you just have 3 or between 3 and 9 inclusives, then you say nevarech shachanu mishalo. But if you have 10 or more, we say nevarech lelokeinu shachanu mishalo. You add in Hashem's name. But really, it's a debate in the Mishnah. There's an opinion of Rabbi Yossi al-Galili, and he says that if you have 10 people, you add in Elokeinu. If you have 100 people, you add in something else. If you have 1,000 people, you add in extra words. If you have 10,000 people, you add in more. If you have 100,000 people, you add in more. In other words, it's sort of a step-by-step growth here, according to Rabbi Yossi al-Galili. 10, you say one thing. 100, you say something additional. 1,000, you say something additional. And it goes up progressively. Says Rabbi Akiva, no, I disagree. He says there's no difference between 10 and 100 and 1,000 and 10,000 and a million. Anything 10 or above, you just add in the text as we say today. So why is that? What's the nature of this dispute? So I'd like to suggest, and I think it makes sense to say that Rabbi Akiva holds that 10 is not just a bigger number than any individual units, but 10 is its own entity altogether. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether you have 10, 100, 1,000, or a million. Once you hit 10, you've taken on a new status, and that status doesn't change anymore. Qualitatively, it's qualitatively different to any individual units. It doesn't matter whether you have more of those or less of those. Once you're in that period, that group of 10 plus, then it's all considered the one entity. What was the problem with Rabbi Akiva's students? The Gemara says, Lo nahaku kavod ze bazeh, ze lazeh. They didn't show kavod this to that, ze lazeh. In other words, they still looked at each other as a this and a this. They saw each other as just different people that happened to be together. And that was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi al-Galili. Effectively, they were paralleling that approach rather than the approach of the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's approach was v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, your brother like yourself. In other words, you should see each other as being the one unit. To the extent that the Yerushalmi brings a parable, says that the same way that no one will come along if you're cutting up vegetables and you cut your left hand with a knife, so you're never going to come along and take the knife and put in the other hand and cut the other hand in revenge, because it's part of the same body. Your right hand, your left hand, it's the same body. So therefore, says Rabbi Akiva, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Really, the pasuk says that kamocha, everyone should see their fellow as themselves. And therefore, the problem with the Talmidim was lo nahagu covered zeh la zeh. They saw each other as individuals. They didn't see kamocha, reacha. They didn't see each other as one club. And I think this explains Rashi on the Torah. Rashi on the pasuk of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha says zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is an important principle in the Torah. What does it mean? This is an important principle. Shkoyach. Many important principles in the Torah. Doesn't say Rashi doesn't say on Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is an important principle. Rashi doesn't say on the Ten Commandments zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Why does he say on V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha that this is an important principle? Everything's important. If you have a Sefer Torah, it's missing one letter, the whole thing's possible, the whole thing's not kosher. So it doesn't mean that this is an important principle of the Torah. So I think what Rashi is saying is that zeh, that the notion of zeh, lo nagu covered zeh la zeh, they looked at each other as a zeh, as a this, as a distinct person, distinct from each other. Zeh is the klal gadol of the Torah. They looked at each other as a zeh rather than as the klal, looked at each other as individuals rather than as the klal gadol. That is where they went wrong. You have to look at, you've got to stop looking at the zeh and rather look at the klal gadol, and that is the essence of Kol Torah Kula. So I think based on this, we can see that this is a principle that Rav Kook develops that where the Sadducees deferred from the believers in the Torah Shebaal Peh. They didn't accept the authority of the Torah Shebaal Peh because they didn't accept the authority of Am Yisrael. Why? Because the relationship between Torah Shebaal Peh and Torah Shebichtav, the relationship between the oral Torah and the written Torah, is similar to the relationship between Am Yisrael and the Torah. What do I mean by that? Is that unlike the written Torah, which was transmitted directly from Hashem, so the oral Torah was transmitted through the sages, through the Chachamim. And this emphasizes the Kedusha and the holiness and the special, unique nature of Am Yisrael. That the Torah empowered the Chachamim of each and every generation to transform the Torah. It doesn't mean to change the Torah, but to channel it and to utilize it and to adapt it, and so not adapt, right, apply it to the generation. And this really is the essence. This is the same relationship. The relationship between Am Yisrael and the Torah, the relationship between the Torah Shebaal Peh and the Torah Shebichtav, is also the relationship between the Chagim and Shabbat. And this really explains the other debate. We've explained the Korban Tamid, why they argued over that. We've explained why they argued over Torah Shebaal Peh in general, but why do they argue specifically over Shabbat? So there's a Gemara in Beitza Daf Yud Zayin that says that the text that we say on Yom Tov is different in the Shemona Esrei is different to the text that we say on a regular Shabbat. On a regular Shabbat, we say, we bless Baruch Hashem Mikadesh Shabbat, that we praise Hashem who sanctifies Shabbat. But what do we say on Yom Tov? Baruch Hashem Mikadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. That we sanctify, we praise Hashem who is Mikadesh, who sanctifies Yisrael, the Jewish people, v'hazmanim, and the holidays, and the Chagim and the festivals. In other words, it's through sanctifying Am Yisrael and giving the koyach, the power to Am Yisrael, to the leaders of Am Yisrael, the Chachamim of Am Yisrael, that is what sanctifies the Chagim. To the extent that the Gemara says, for example, that if you want to know when Yom Tov would be, so it depended on when the Beit Din declared a new month. The Beit Din didn't declare a new month, so Yom Tov will be pushed off another day, or we brought a day forward. Or if the Beit Din declared a leap year, so then there'll be a second Adar, and then Pesach would be a whole month later, or the Chagim would be a whole month later. Why? Because the power was with the Am Yisrael. So first it was Mekadesh Yisrael. First Hashem sanctified Yisrael, and then Bahazmanim. Then we're able to sanctify the Chagim. And the Gemara even says that Atem afilu mutayim, that even if they get it wrong, even if they made a mistake, even if in objective absolute terms the Chachamim get the date wrong, right? The witnesses come the wrong date, or that there's a mix-up. Nevertheless, it still counts. Atem afilu mutam, even if you get it wrong, nevertheless, the koyach is with Am Yisrael to establish when it is, when Yom Tov is. As opposed to Shabbat, the Gemara says Shabbat is a kfir v'kaima, that Shabbat is in existence, it's always on the seventh day. It doesn't matter what you do, what you don't do, what the Beis Din did, Sanhedrin did or didn't do, it always happened on the seventh day. And says Rav Kook, that the same way that the same way that the Kedusha of Torah Shebaal Peh is inherent and embedded in Torah Shebichtav, so too the Kedusha of the Chagim is rooted in the Kedusha of Shabbat. And that's why we say in Kiddush on Yom Tov, we say Techila Lemikra Kodesh, that Shabbat is the beginning. Shabbat is Techila, it's the beginning, Lemikra Kodesh, for the holy days, because the Shabbat is the root of the Kedusha of all the Chagim. And based on this, we can understand why Dafka the Torah says you should start counting Yomeh Mimocharat Shabbat. Again, why say that? Because referring to Pesach, just don't have this whole remove any chance of any error. Why leave any room for mistake? Say Sfatim Lachem Mimocharat Pesach. Why say Mimocharat Shabbat? So it says Rav Kook that Pesach is the very first of the Chagim for the year. All right, Nisan is the first month of the year, and Pesach is the very first month. So therefore, because it's the first Yom Tov, Hashem, says Rav Kook, and the Torah wanted to show that Pesach is really rooted, and all the Chagim are really rooted in Shabbat. The same way that Torah Shabbat Peh is rooted in Torah Shebichtav, so too the Kedusha of the Chagim are rooted in the holiness of the Torah Shebichtav and rooted in the holiness of Shabbat. A different answer brought by the Bnei Yisachar. He says that we know, as we said before, that Shabbat comes from above. Right? Every seventh day there's Shabbat. Doesn't matter if you prepare for it, you don't prepare for it. Obviously, you should prepare for it. But if you don't prepare for it, Shabbat comes from above. It hits you. You're warped into this time zone. Shabbat happens regardless of your actions. And we said that the Chagim happened when the Beit Din decided, at least initially, now we have a fixed calendar, but at least initially the Chagim happened when the Beit Din decided to declare a new month. So he says the reason why it was specifically Pesach that's referred to as Shabbat is because the very, very first Pesach had the status of a Shabbat. What does it mean? Is that ordinarily, as we said, Yom Tov has to come from below. Yom Tov comes when the Beis Din decides it's time to declare a new month, and then you know when Yom Tov should be. Shabbat comes from above. So that's the same for every Yom Tov except for the very, very initial one when we left Egypt. Why? Because the miracles that happened when we left Egypt, that came from above. The Jews were passive. We were passive bystanders in the Yetzias Mitzrayim. Through Moshe and Aaron, the plagues came down, and they were sort of the kli for it to happen. But really, the miracles happened from above. It happened from Hashem. We were passive, and therefore, even though Pesach is a Yom Tov, but the initial Pesach that had the qualities of a Shabbat in the sense that it came from above rather than coming from below. It says the Lubavitch Rebbe, he says this is how we can understand the debate between Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and the Sadducees. So again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that, no, you think that Moshe really loved the Jewish people. If you really loved the Jewish people, he wouldn't have taken them through the desert for 40 years. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew very well that it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's fault they went through the desert for 40 years. He knew very well that it was because of the Meraglim. He knew that it was because of the spies. So how can he say that if he loved us, he wouldn't have done that? So it says in the Lubavitch Rebbe, said that if you really love someone, you want to bring out the best in that person. You want to bring out the best in that person. If you give them free gifts the whole time, if you keep showering them with everything they need and they don't need, or they think they need, they don't even realize that they don't need, keep showering them with things, and even if they make mistakes, so then that's not a real sign of love. Why? Because they're never going to learn, they're never going to grow on their own. But if you want to be able to grow properly, so you have to let that person stand on their own 2 feet. And therefore, the greatest sign of love is when you not punish a person, your child or your students coming from a vindictive place, but you punish them because you want to show them how they can learn and how they can reach the best potential. So therefore, Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, was a true love of the Jewish people, but he showed them, or really via Hashem, that the way to love you is by showing you have to go through the desert for 40 years. I.e., you have to learn from your mistakes and you have to trek, and it's not going to come from above anymore. You can't be passive bystanders anymore. I'm not just going to give it to you on a silver platter, but no, you have to travel, you have to work for it, and you have to earn it now. And that's the true love, just like a true parent. The way you show love, the parent shows love to the kid is by making them earn that which they desire. So too, that's the true love. So what's the message from this? That we know, we say before davening in the morning that we have the notion of klal or prat. You have the group and you have the individual. And we say that klal or prat or klal, that if you want to understand the klal, you have to look at the prat. But if you want to understand the community, you have to look at the individuals. But as individuals, we have to realize that we have to use our individual talents for the sake of the community. So only when you use it for the sake of the community that you can really give to the community. Now let's use this principle and let's answer our questions. So the last question we asked was, how do we understand Shechianu? Again, the Shibbolei Alek and the Meiri say that, yeah, we do say Shechianu over Sefirat Omer, just that we do it we do it on Pesach. The Shechianu we say on Pesach, that counts. Pesach seems to be disconnected. How do we understand this? So based on the Bnei Yisachar, it makes sense. That Pesach, as we said, came from above. But if you want to really grow, it can't be that you're coming from above if someone's showering with everything. You have to learn, you have to grow on your own. I'll give you a mashal. So if someone's learning to ride the bike, so you have a little kid, you're trying to teach your kid how to ride a bike. So what do? So first you get the bike and you put the training wheels on the side of the bike. And the kid starts riding and having a great time. They're able to go on the road. They're not falling over. They think they've got the knack of it. They think they've mastered it. And on the top of the world, they're super happy. Then eventually, once they get the hang of that, what do the parents do? The parents take off the training wheels. And now they're just left with the 2 wheels. So then what happens? The kid who's used to the security of riding with the training wheels and not falling, suddenly the training wheels are taken off, and suddenly they start falling, and they're not able to go anymore. They get upset, they're kicking and screaming, you hate me, you don't love me anymore, what are you doing to me? But really, eventually they start building up. I remember when I was learning how to ride a bike, you start building up, and you can go a few cycles of the wheel, and then you go a few more, you fall off, you get back up. Eventually, you get the knack of it. Eventually, you learn how to ride. And then once you're able to ride without the training wheels properly, so you realize that the riding you had before wasn't really much. You were limited with what you could have achieved. But now that you've taken the training wheels off, you had the training wheels initially to see what the goal was, then the training wheels come off, and then you can build up to that goal and you're able to take it that step further. So too it came with Am Yisrael. That on Pesach, it came from above. It was like the Shabbat mode. We had the Shabbat qualities. That Hashem showered us with miracles, with the 10 plagues, with the plagues of the sea, but that all came from above. And Hashem was showing us the Kedusha that we can achieve. But then Hashem, so to speak, took off the training wheels, and he said, okay, now the training wheels are off, now I want you to earn that yourself. And that's the process of Sefirat Omer. And therefore, we can explain that it's intrinsically connected to Pesach. It's not just we start counting Mimocharat Shabbat, the day after Pesach, Mimocharat Shabbat, Mimocharat Pesach, the day after Pesach. It's not just telling us a time, saying that no, the way to start counting is when you go beyond the Pesach, you push off the Pesach, you break yourself free of the Pesach qualities. The Pesach qualities being coming from above, the Shabbat qualities where it comes from above, without any human involvement. You have to go Mimocharat Shabbat. You have to break off from the Shabbat, and then you can start building up with the training wheels off. You can start building up to the top. So therefore, we can understand the Shechianu of Seder night is directly and intrinsically connected to Shechianu and Sefirat Omer because it's one and the same. It's a process of how to achieve and how to grow in life. First, you see the goal, the Pesach with the Shabbat, regular Shabbat qualities, and then you start building up towards that goal. That's the Sefirat Omer relationship. We can understand why do we count in shul? On the first night of Sefira, if you have everyone in the minyan still in the count, well, why does the rabbi or the chazan count in shul and then everyone else counts? What's the point? We don't find with other mitzvot that the rabbi does and then everyone does. He doesn't shake lulav and then everyone follows. So the Sifri says, we mentioned right at the beginning, that there's a difference between the first time in the Torah that Sefirat Omer is mentioned and the second time it's mentioned. The first time it says you should do Sfatim Lachem, as we said, and the Gemara says that each and every person has to count. And the second time it says Lecha, it says Lach, it says you on the singular. And the Sifri, the Midrash says that that's referring to Beit Din. So therefore, when we count, there's really two components to the count. There's a communal component and there's an individual component. As we saw before, that the individual is meant to use his talents for the sake of the community. So therefore, we count from both aspects. The rabbi counts first on behalf of the community, even if the entire community has counted, he's counting on behalf of the tzibur aspect, which is qualitatively different to any individual. And then afterwards, we count on an individual level because we have to work up ourselves. So in other words, that the community has to work up, and so too the individual has to work up. And then now, based on that, we can understand the opinion that says that there's no concept of Shomea Ka'aneh, there's no concept of relying on someone else to count for you. If you're missed out on the count, you can rely on someone making the bracha for you, but everyone has to count for themselves according to this view. Why is that the case? Why is it different to a normal mitzvah like Kiddush or any other mitzvah of speech where Shomea Ka'aneh, where listening counts, if you have active listening, it counts, and you can fulfill your obligation through hearing someone else do it. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says that Derech Eretz is a prerequisite for Torah. And if you don't have Derech Eretz, you don't have Torah. And therefore, the time period of the Sefirat Omer is the appropriate time to work on our midot, work on our Derech Eretz, and start working on our character traits to build up towards Kabbalah HaTorah on Har Sinai. It says the Avnei Nezer, the Sogat Shava, it says when it comes to self-development, by definition, that's a personal experience. By definition, self-development, working on yourself, it has to be personal. I can't work on an attribute of anger or laziness or stinginess on behalf of someone else. If that person has that problem, they have to work on that themselves. If I have that problem, I have to work on that myself. I can't do it for you and you can't do it for me. So therefore, says the Avnei Nezer, says now we can understand why there's an opinion that holds that you can't count for someone else, because the whole counting of Sefirat Omer is about working up towards that end goal. Pesach showered from above, and then Sefira is working up. And once you reach, just like without the training wheels, you can go much further. So to Shavuot, we can go much further than we could have before. But because Sefirat Omer is about that personal growth trajectory, so when it comes to that growth, you can't do that for anyone else. I can't count for you because I can't grow for you. And you can't count for me because you can't grow for me. Because each and every one of us have a unique mission in life and in Torah. And therefore, fulfilling the mitzvah through someone else is counterintuitive to the very nature of the mitzvah. We can't grow vicariously through the medium of others. Rather, it has to be personal day by day. And similarly, the communal component has to be done out loud because that everyone has to hear that, because as a community, we have to learn to grow as well. And really, we'll end with this, that there's a dual message. First and foremost, is that there's an importance and power of the community. And something that I think in the particular time period we find ourselves in now all around the world is that we're realizing this more than ever. So on the one hand, we're missing our communities. Right? Those people that go to shul every day, go to shul every week, or have communal involvement, have simchas, go to weddings, go to bar mitzvahs, brit milah, etc. Unfortunately, negative things, kfura, levaya, shiva calls. So we're all missing that at the moment. We're missing the concept of a community. We feel disconnected, feel missing from our respective communities. But on the other hand, in a strange and nice way, I guess, that we feel more connected to other people than we ever have before. We can sit in our own homes and we have this Zoom call. And we have people connecting from all over the world, from different countries. And this is one of thousands and thousands of shiurim that are happening all around the world on a daily basis. That even though we're separated physically and geographically from our communities, even if we might be next door to each other, but nevertheless, we're more connected in a particular way than we otherwise would have been. So that's the first message. That's the importance and power of the community. The same way Rav Kook said that the tzibur is qualitatively different to the individual. Nevertheless, you have to look at the individual to give towards the community. Every individual has to bring his own kochot, bring his own talents, his own abilities, his own strengths towards the community, and use that for the sake of the community. So that's the first message: the power and the importance of the community. And the second message from all this is the importance of taking the passive inspiration and transforming that and channeling that into passive action. And that's also really the message of Shvi Shor Pesach, which we'll come to tomorrow night, please God. And it's interesting that the Gemara says, I'll finish with this, the Gemara says that the notion of Tchiyat HaMeitim, of the dead coming back to life, the Gemara says, where do we find an allusion to that in the Torah? So the Gemara says, Az Yashir Moshe Avnei Yisrael. That then Moshe sang. Says the Gemara points out that says Az means then in the past tense, and Yashir is in the future. So then the Gemara says it must be it's referring to what Moshe sang then was really a song for the future, i.e. Moshe was singing a song for the Tchiyat HaMeitim. Rashi asks a question. Rashi says, well, it's not the only place in the Torah. We have many other occasions where we have the past tense and the future tense mentioned in the same pasuk, in the same like juxtaposed words. So why is that? Why is the Kriyat Yam Suf the prototype of Tchiyat HaMeitim? Furthermore, the Midrash says that at Yetziat Mitzrayim, only Yisro sang praise to Hashem, but it came to the splitting of the sea, all of Am Yisrael sang praise to Hashem. So why is that? Why is that the Yisro alone sang song, but everyone else did afterwards? So Rav Soloveitchik explained that when it comes to Kedusha, when it comes to Geula and Kedusha and attaining that, Kedusha is only eternal when it's man-made, when man achieves it himself. And he says, if you look at the two important mountains in Jewish history, so it's Har Sinai and Har HaMoriah. Har Sinai when we got the Torah, and Har HaMoriah where Avram took Yitzchak for the Akedah, and it's where the Beit HaMikdash was, and please God will be very soon. He says when it comes to Har Sinai, which was an awesome place to be, so that we don't even know where that is today. Whereas Har HaMoriah, that's eternally holy to the extent that many people won't go up there today. And even those that do only go to certain places because the Kedusha is still in existence for eternity. So why was it? Why did Har Sinai, why was that temporary? The Kedusha of Har Sinai was temporary, but the Kedusha of Har HaMoriah was eternal. Says Rav Soloveitchik, so when it came to Har Sinai, the Kedusha came from above. Hashem came down to Am Yisrael. Hashem came down to Moshe Rabbeinu. When it came to Har HaMoriah, Avraham came up with Yitzchak. Man came up to God. When God comes down to man, then it's holy, but it's temporary. But when man comes up to God, that's eternal. And that's the reason why it's only Yisro that sang Shira at Yetzias Mitzrayim, but all of Am Yisrael sang Shira at the Kriyas Yam Suf, because in Mitzrayim, all the miracles came from above. It was a Shabbos kind of approach, as we said before. But it came to the Kriyas Yam Suf, so it only happened when Am Yisrael jumped into the sea, and therefore all of Am Yisrael could sing Shira. And that's the reason why, that's the reason why, according to the Gemara, that the remez, the allusion to Tchiyas HaMeisim, to the return of the dead in the Torah, comes from Az Yashim Moshe B'nai Yisrael, comes from the Kriyas Yam Suf, splitting of the sea. Because if you want to be able to bring the Geula, if you want to bring Mashiach, so the way to do it is taking active involvement, stop being a passive bystander, but become an active player. And that's really the message of all of this. That we have to be involved with the community, appreciate the power of the community, that the koyach of the community is much, much greater than the sum of its parts, much, much greater than any individual. At the same time, we have to realize that we need to be active. We can't just rely on it happening from above. We have to take the active involvement to achieve eternal holiness. So I want to wish everyone a good Yom Tov for tomorrow night, and everyone should be healthy and safe, and should be the end of the troubles for all of Am Yisrael and all of the world. And please God, in the merit of our everyone putting in the effort on a personal level, on a communal level, we should achieve the ultimate Geula with the coming of Mashiach. Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu. Amen.